Today's lesson is on section 9.6, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c trinomials. So far in this chapter, they've been pretty nice to us. They've been letting us factor either binomials or trinomials where our leading coefficient was just 1. But now we're going to start factoring, I should highlight here, we've been factoring trinomials like this, x squared plus bx plus c, but now, as I sometimes say, we're getting into big boy and big girl math. Not messing around anymore. Now when we're factoring, we'll have a few more combinations to deal with because this term here, this first term, won't just be 1 or for a coefficient or a leading coefficient. We will typically have some kind of number there maybe that we cannot get rid of. We can't just factor out a 2 or factor out a 3 in each of these first two trinomials. And so we're going to have to deal with that in the two binomials that we are trying to factor this trinomial into. If you remember, back a few lessons ago, I'm going back to a different slide here, but back a few lessons ago, when we first started to factor trinomials, we did talk about this as well. We've seen so far the pattern that whenever I have just x squared, again, my leading coefficient is just a 1, we were able to find a nice way to find combinations and factors of this constant, the third term in our trinomial here, whatever, like this 30. We need factors of this 30 that would combine to give me the middle term. And that was mainly all we had to deal with. But we did mention that even this first term, this x squared term here, this also comes from factors from the first two terms in our binomials. So now when we are factoring these trinomials, we'll have to consider that. And we'll really have to look at our as we'll talk about the FOIL method or one of our multiply methods to kind of recheck and make sure that we are factoring these correctly. Now these problems always take a little practice too. The first day always is the toughest day, the second day gets a little better, the third day, and so on. When you keep practicing the strategies, if you keep doing the homework, and you're checking your answers to see that you're getting them right or asking questions about ones when you're not seeing how they fit together, that will help you. You got to work on these though. These take practice, just like anything else. These definitely take a little work, and the more you do, the better you get at them. So trying to factor this first trinomial here, for example. So first thing you should always still look to do, even when we're factoring any trinomial or factoring anything, I should first look to see, is there something I can factor out of each of these three terms? And in this case, no, I don't think so. I can't take out a 2 or a 3 or any number like that or any variable. So I'm just going to have to try to now factor into two binomials. And we'll talk about in the future. There are problems sometimes that won't factor, but most of the problems for our purposes are going to factor for us. Again, this is a quadratic. The degree of this polynomial is 2. That's the leading or the highest degree in all the terms we have. So yep, it's something that we can try to factor, and we're going to attempt it right now. So when I'm factoring into two binomials and I've got some term here like 2x squared, well, again, realize these first two terms in the binomials have to multiply together to give me this 2x squared. So typically what I like to do, we're still going to list combinations that work here of like this number, just like we do with the last term. Factors of 2 are just 1 and 2. And so I'm going to have to, and then x squared is going to come from x times x. I like to start with the bigger factor first. I like to go 2x and x. Then when I'm putting a combination in there. And again, as opposed to in the future where, or sorry, in the past where we just had like, we could just worry about whatever the factors of 3 were and the factors that would combine to give me 7. Well, now we're going to have to consider the fact that when I take 2x and I'm doing like my FOIL, like times it by my first term, and then my outside term, things are going to have to combine correctly for me to get negative 7x in this case. Let's go to the 3 here and take a look at that. Factors of 3, nice enough. There's only one combination. It's 1 and 3. And I'll have to figure out which way is that going to work. Should I put the 1 here and the 3 here, or should I switch them around? We will see. I have to get to negative 7x. Now, it's positive 3. So knowing some of our rules that we've talked about in the past, since it's a positive, I do know the signs are going to be the same, and this is a negative 7x, so I know it's going to be minus and minus in terms of my two binomials. And now checking to see whether that works. Is this the right combination of binomials? It's like I have to check kind of like when I do my FOIL method. But for FOIL, the first terms, if I've laid this out where I've taken factors of 2x squared and factors of 3, then these two should work out just fine, the f and the L. It's really I just have to check the O and the I, because that's what gives me this middle term, this negative 7x. So I have to check these two and see if this, what I multiply together, gives me negative 7x. So just backtrack and get that circle out of there. So the O of FOIL, remember, is the outside term. So I'm multiplying 2x times negative 3x, and that gives me negative 6x. And then the I of FOIL is the middle term. So negative 1 times x give me negative 1x. And when I combine these, what do you know? I do get that negative 7x. So this is the correct way to factor that trinomial. Those two binomials, 2x minus 1 and x minus 3. Again, as you notice, takes a little more thinking now because we have that first term. And in this case, nice enough, even the first and the last terms, we only had one combination for each. Sometimes there'll be more combinations that we may have to check. But we've got to find the right combination, the right two binomials that would multiply together to give me that original trinomial. This is our answer, though, those two binomials. Let's move on to the next one. Scrolling down here. So this one says 3f squared plus 14f minus 5. The more we do these, I will kind of show you some strategies as well to keep in mind as you start to factor more trinomials. But first thing I still just think always we should do is see, can we factor something out of all these terms? That can make our life a lot easier. In this case, 3, 14, 5, no, all those numbers are prime to each other. I really can't factor out a 2 or a 3 or anything. So I'm just going to have to try to factor into two binomials. It's a quadratic, so yep, this is the technique that I'm going to try now. So I'm going to list the factors of 3, which is nice enough, just 1 and 3, and the factors of 5, which are just 1 and 5. So again, at least we only have one set of factors for each of those numbers that I'm going to use. I'm going to make my two binomials, or my two sets of parentheses, I should say, and start making my binomials. Again, I like to start with the bigger number. It really doesn't matter. You could say f and 3f, but I like to start with the bigger number on the left. And then I have to have 1 and 5 is going to be my other combination. Now, take a look. Again, we will talk about strategies more in class, and the more we do these, but look at the middle number that I'm trying to combine to get in this case. It's 14. It's bigger than either of these numbers. And take a look at the numbers I have. Something hopefully maybe kind of rings a bell. I want to get to 14, and notice that I have 3 and I have 5. 3 times 5 gives me 15, which is 1 away. You'll start incorporating strategies like this too, to realize that, oh, if I want to get to 14, I probably want to get close to that. Well, 3 times 5 gets me close. And so I'm going to have to put the 5 over opposite the 3. And so when I do my outside, my O of FOIL, remember FOIL, when I do the O of FOIL, I don't have to worry about F and L because I've already arranged 3 and 5 as and its factors. But when I do these two, if I want to get 15, I'm going to have to put 5 on the opposite side of the 3, because then these two are going to multiply together and give me 15f. I have to put my 1 here, another factor for 5. And now, just as a reminder too, my sign on 5, it's negative 5. So I'm going to have a positive and a negative, a plus and minus sign for my binomials. I want to get to positive 14. Let's just try it like this and see what happens. What if I put plus here and minus here? Well, in that case then, when I did my O of FOIL, I was going to get negative 15f. And my inside is going to give me positive 1f. And that combines to give me negative 14f. That's not what I want though. So as you're going to find too, when you start doing some of this factoring, sometimes you got to try different combinations and write something down, see if that works. If that doesn't, you may have to fix it or fix the signs and where they are. In this case, I think that's what we're going to have here. I think to get positive 14, I've just got to change this to change my two signs around. F3f minus 1 and f plus 5. Now when I do my outside terms for FOIL, 3f times 5 gives me 15f, positive 15f, and negative 1 times f gives me minus 1f, and yep, that gives me 14f, which is what I want. So this is my factoring combination. Those are the two binomials I want. I'll go through a couple more examples here, maybe just a little quicker. Again, I'd really kind of walk through slowly on those first two, but maybe you're starting to get the idea, and if not, that's okay. Maybe watch some of these examples and see what you think after this. So 2x squared plus minus 5x minus 3. I'm going to factor this trinomial. Again, first thing though is I can't factor anything out of it. So I can't take out a 2 or a 3 or anything like that. So always still look to do that first. Then I'm going to list my factors of the leading coefficient, 1 and 2. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3. And then I'm going to note here that I want to get to -3. So that's going to remind me that in my binomials, I'm going to have to have one positive, or one plus, and one minus. Good. Again, I like to start with 2x and then x. I like to start with the bigger number first. I'm trying to get to -5. -5x in the middle. Again, thinking, again, just kind of out loud into the combinations. I just have 1 and 2 and 1 and 3. I don't have anything else to check. But 3 times 2, right, gives me 6, and that's 1 away. So maybe that's a good thing to try to start with here. I'm going to put the 3 over on this side, and then the 1 here in terms of my factors for 3. And again, it's -3, so now I've got to arrange my signs so that I get, as a way I can get -5. And I think if I put 2x plus 1 and x minus 3, I think it's going to work. Let's take a look. And again, if not, I could fix it. So let's try this. 2x times -3 gives me -6x for my outside. My inside gives me positive 1x. And when I combine those, yep, I get -5x, which is what I want. So there's my correct answer. 2x plus 1 and x minus 3. Good, let's move on to the next one. 5k squared minus 13k plus 6. Again, nice enough. Oops, I should start off though. Can I factor something out of any of these terms? No, I can't. I've kind of set a lot of these up. A lot of these first ones like that. I can't take out a 5 or a 2 or anything. So I'm just going to start looking at my factors, 1 and 5. Now when I look at 6, I do have a couple combinations. I have 1 and 6 and 2 and 3, both those sets of factors for 6. So I may have to check both of them to find what the right combination is. I also note that it's positive 6, so that tells me that my signs are going to be the same, and they're both going to be subtraction. So starting my binomials, I've got 5k and k, and again, I do know they're both going to be subtraction. That makes things a little easier. You're going to find if that last number is positive, at least I know the signs offhand. And now, which combination is going to get me to -13? I think, again, just doing this problem and kind of, if you want to pause and try them each before I go through them, that's probably a good idea for this note sheet. So you pause and see if you can find them first, and then take a look at my answer. I think I have a good feeling that 5k minus 3 and k minus 2 is going to be the combination that works. Let's double check it though. This is what you need to do as well. 5k times -2 gives me -10k. -3 times k gives me -3k. And yep, those combine to give me -13. So there's my combination. I can maybe right now pause the video, try the last 2 or 3 that I have on this page, and then I'm going to go through them right now as well. Again, these next ones I'll go through maybe a little quicker. Number 5, I can't factor anything out of it or all these terms, so I'm just going to start listing my factors. And in this case, the leading coefficient, I have a couple sets of factors, 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. The last number, I just have 1 and 5 that are combinations. So I start making my binomials. And in this case, I've got a feeling, again, I think I like to start off with 4y and then y. I think that's going to be the combination I'm going to use. You may have started by trying 2 and 2. But 4y and y I think is the combination I want. Nice enough, it's positive 5, so I know both signs are the same, and they both have to be subtraction. And I think if I put 5 and 1 as my two constants in that order, 4y minus 5 and y minus 1, I think that's going to be the combination I want. 4y times 1 gives me 4y, and then -4y, and -5 times y gives me -5y, which gives me -9y. So there's my combination for this binomial. Moving on to number 6. Now again, problems like this, as you're going to find, look at the combinations I have on each of these coefficients in this constant, 6 and 24. A lot of combinations for factors there. And I see I can't factor anything out to help myself, so I'm just going to have to deal with the fact there's a lot of combinations, 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. 24 is 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. I'm just going to have to check a lot of these combinations to see what works. I will teach you strategies, though, along the way. And you're going to find out that by looking at that middle constant, or that middle term, like 7x, there's some strategies that can help you. And typically, here's one that I've just noticed. Isn't always 100%, but I'd say like 95% of the time what happens is if you have a smaller number in the middle, like 7x, like a number that's smaller than both the numbers on the outside, typically you're going to use some of the smaller combinations, like maybe some at the top that I would start with. If you have a bigger number, And sometimes you use some of those bigger combinations because if you think about it, let's say I had a number like 40 in the middle. Well, maybe it's because I did 24 times 2 or something. I usually end up multiplying some bigger numbers to get bigger numbers. So just kind of one hint that can work sometimes. I would start with, when you see a smaller in the middle, I would usually start with some of the smaller combinations and then see which ones work. Now, taking a look at this one, so I am going to start with 3x and 2x for 6. And I do know, oops, I miswrote up here. It's not 4 and 8, it's 4 and 6 is my combination. I might have said that, but I wrote the wrong thing, 4 and 6. But I do actually know, after working through these combinations, knowing this is negative 24, I'm going to have one of each sign. 2 and 3 is the combination I want, but 3 and 8 is actually the combination for 24 that I'm going to use, and I think I'm going to arrange it like this. And I get to positive 7. So I think 3x plus 8 and 2x minus 3 is the combination I want. Double checking that right now. 3x times negative 3 gives me negative 9x. 8 times 2 gives me positive 16x. And yes, that gives me positive 7x. So there's my two binomials that I want. Then I want to show you this last problem because every single problem before this I've talked about how we should first look to factor out something like reverse distribution. Factor out a monomial first if you can. Take a look at this problem. If you tried to just factor like we did above with two binomials right off the bat, again, we'd have to deal with a lot of combinations. 1 and 4 and 2 and 2 for the leading coefficient. And then 1 and 12 and 2 and 6 and 3 and 4. Again, this makes for a lot of combinations and a lot more work potentially. But take a look at this problem. The first thing I can do, as opposed to dealing with all those combinations, is I can factor out of 4 out of all these terms. X squared minus 2x minus 3. And now, take a look at what I've got left to try to factor this remaining trinomial. Well, now I just have like x squared as my starting, like we're used to seeing. So if I try to factor this, I can just go back to good old x and x. And 3 and 1 are my only combinations over there. And so this made this problem much easier for me now. It's negative 3, so I'll have two different signs. I gotta get to negative 2. I think if I say x plus 1 and x minus 3, that'll be the combination that works. That saved me a lot of time in terms of not having to check all those different combinations for 12 and different combinations for 4. So just a reminder, a problem like number 7 is definitely one that should help you remember. You definitely want to always try to factor some monomial out first if you can. Saves you a lot of time, makes your life a lot easier when you're trying to factor.